There we go. Good. Hello. Good
Hey.
evening to everyone in the US. Good morning to everyone in Australia. I am joining you from lovely Portland, Oregon today, this evening, and I'm super excited. We have been talking, Jacine and I, for a while now about ways to support professionals. And I, as a licensed esthetician in the United States, have watched Jacine and all of the amazing support that she provides from her heart. So for those of you that don't know who I am, my name is Richard Merrill. I am the CEO of Richard Merrill Consulting, and my brand helps salon and spa professionals boost their business using fundamental business acumen. Jacine is the CEO and founder of Coco Botanicals, an award-winning skincare line, not to mention award-winning cosmetic chemist. She's also been named the 2022 fastest growing beauty brand in Australia and the Asian Pacific region. That is a huge accolade. She's also a best-selling author and talk about how she's achieved this long list of accolades. And for those of you that don't know, there's also a free Facebook group available to you called Educated Therapists, where you literally get to pick Jacine's brain. So if you don't get your answers today, you can join us over there in that Facebook group. And I am just so excited, Jacine, to have you on this conversation and here to just share everything that you have to share with us today.
Thank you, Richard. It's an absolute honor, and I'm super excited to share as well. For those of you who don't know me very well, I grew up with no money. So my dad was a priest and my mother became a priest as well. And so I didn't grow up with having any money. In fact, my childhood was secondhand clothes and borrowing friends' stuff for free dress days. So one of the things that I quite remember distinctly was not liking it. And one of the questions that's always pondered me in particular, Richard, is how can you have 3 kids or siblings grow up in the same environment and yet one is very different to the others? How is that quite possible? Because not to say that I'm more intelligent than my brothers or sisters, I'm certainly not. However, I am different to them. And for me, that experience of childhood and not having things was a powerful catalyst for growth for me. And one of the biggest mysteries of life is people will actually do more to avoid pain than they will to gain pleasure. And so for me, being broke is painful. It's no choices, it's no whatever. But my siblings don't have the same experience as me. And there's a little bit of a reason why, and some of you may be familiar with these terms, but has anyone, and just raise your hands if you have, has anyone heard the expression of reticular activating system, or RAS? Because for most of us, we're not aware of it. And our reticular activating system is a part of our brain that actually is basically alerting our subconscious to what's important to us. And so I'm sure you've all had the experience of wanting a vehicle, because a car, as everyone has a dream car, and you want that vehicle, and suddenly you seem to be seeing them everywhere. And it's because they're there all the time, but it's now being brought into your consciousness. And so you're aware of it. And you can apply this to business as well, because how many of you don't have your ideal client? I guarantee you there'll be a few of you. So if you don't have your ideal client and, basically you've got customers that are coming in that are not fulfilling you, who are not making you happy, there's a reason why, is because your actual ideal client could be walking straight past, but your brain hasn't even acknowledged what your ideal client is. I recently just went on a retreat a little while ago, and basically one of the gentlemen on there was talking about how he wanted to get back into his love life, and he was out there dating. And I said, what do you want? And he said, I don't know. And I said, well, how are you going to recognize it if you don't know what you want? So the first step I would be saying to success is be clear on what you want and why you want it. So if you don't know what you want, how are you going to know when it hits you? It's like aiming for a target, but you don't actually know what the center of the target is. You're just aiming aimlessly. So there are a few hands up I can see here, which I'm not sure if you can see it, Richard, because it's my Zoom. If you're wanting to ask a question, could I ask that you guys pop it in the chat box, and we can always unmute you afterwards if you would like to, and then that will be good. But that would be one of the things I'd say, be very clear on what you want. And one of the things that I will say is that from my early childhood, I've always known what I've wanted, and I've known what I wanted to become as well. So a lot of times too, people, and I have used this terminology before, and it's, you know, people wear badges of honor and I'll be honest, and if anyone's offended by this, it is not my intention to offend you, but, you know, they wear a badge of honor of, I'm a single mother. Now, I've been a single mother twice, and for periods of years, and I've never used that as a badge of honor. I've never identified myself as a single mother. I've identified myself as a business owner, not as a single mom. And when people identify and attach labels to who they are, it becomes part of their identity, and it becomes very difficult then to separate that, because everyone has a strong sense of identity, and it's who we think we are as a person, and it directs and guides all of our actions and what we do. Another one is, for me, had been for a long time, I have chronic pain. Now, what actually triggered me into, you know, changing that perception was, if I kept identifying with the fact that I had chronic pain, I was never going to, I'm not my pain, if that makes sense. I may be experiencing some things, but when you say I am a diabetic, I am a whatever, it becomes part of your identity. And so as a result, you take that on and you act accordingly, and you act in a certain way. So a lot of times we do identify, like, I'm an esthetician. I still identify as an esthetician. I'm a chemist.
Hey, can I pop in for a second, Jacine?
Yeah.
I think another really great example of this, that is almost something we do every single day, that I noticed in my last few roles I was doing, that somebody actually had to bring to my attention, is how do you respond to the question, how are you? I had a standardized response from 2014 to 2018. My answer was, I'm exhausted, but I love what I do. And one of the things that I've learned through listening to experts like you on this topic is, you know, our words manifest exactly what we want. And in my mind, I had learned somewhere along the way that exhaustion to the outside world meant that I was busy, and busy to the outside world meant productive. And while I was those things, I would have loved to have been in those moments without the exhaustion.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a reason to be exhausted. I mean, I was busy, but I could have done things physically with a simple change of just how you respond to how are you.
I totally agree. Like there's an element of where, because I'm quite truthful, there's a part of you that wants to say how things are. But I also am very conscious, as you said, of your words. And when we speak them out, we're reiterating it. And what people don't realize is that our words accompany thoughts. So our thoughts actually happen before we speak in most instances. And so every time you have a thought, it actually releases neuropeptides in your body. So you're either having a positive thought or you're having a negative thought. Now, we can't control entirely all of our negative thoughts. We're going to redirect our focus. And I'm not saying no one ever be unhappy, because that is totally unrealistic. But it's really about, what are you saying repetitively? If you're saying it once, it's not so bad. But if you're consistently saying day in, day out, I'm exhausted, I'm tired, you're reaffirming that to your neural pathways in your brain, and you will literally get that. Now, in the latest article I actually wrote in The Corporate Escapist, I actually address this because I often hear people say burnout. And this is my definition of burnout. And this is what I've come to with what I've studied, is burnout is when your actions and your subconscious aren't aligned. Because you think about being in a car, you've got the foot on the accelerator and you've got the foot on the brake, and you are burning that tire. But that is why you're burnt out. And it's because you are wanting to go in one direction, but your subconscious has got you on the brake as well. And you are burning rubber. And you're going, why am I so tired? And it's truly because what you're wanting to do, your subconscious isn't on the same journey as you. And that was one of the biggest things that I've had to overcome on my journey, was actually changing my subconscious programming. Because when you grow up with no money, you grew up with money doesn't grow on trees. We can't afford that. No, that's ridiculous. Who do you think you are? Not that my parents said, who do you think they are? But I grew up with, we can't afford that. And so that subconscious programming is filtered into our brains. So before the age of 7, we have no logic or reasoning. So we don't understand when a parent says you can't have this, why they can't have it. Even if you try to justify it to a child, they don't have the mental capacity to understand. And so what happens is they take that on board, because it's not just once it's told numerous times during our childhood. You get to start to form this thing of, I'm not good enough, I don't deserve this. And so that carries forward through us into adult life. And it's only if we consciously go to try to change that things start to transition for us. So for most people, they're walking around in adult bodies with a 7-year-old subconscious.
And it's interesting, you and I, I'm going to share something I personally just experienced on this topic with Jacine. We had a session recently specifically addressing, some childhood things that, I've been in therapy. I've done a lot of mindset work over the years. But something I realized in that session was, we work on what we're aware of. And in this conversation that I had just Friday with Jacine, we were having a conversation and we were doing a reprogramming of an experience from my childhood. And something that I thought was really interesting from that session was I was aware that my mom was involved. I was aware that my dad was involved. I was kind of confident in that whole part of the process. But the thing that snuck up on me was talking about my grandmother, who, mind you, passed away when I was like 11-ish. Mm. And I think because in my mind, she had passed away, she was out of the picture for so long, I never gave power to her involvement in that 7 and early on years. until I had this conversation. So something that I found really valuable to today's conversation and that experience is, we can have these mindset conversations and talk about redirecting your energy and redirecting your words. And sometimes I know for me, I get frustrated when I don't get the result that I want. I feel frustrated by it, but I focused on the thing that I was focused on.
Yeah.
And I thought, the coolest thing about this experience that we did together was something I would have never considered. I would have never even tried to put my grandmother in that conversation, in that experience, in that place of responsibility. And in reality, after coming out of that conversation, she was a huge part of it, going through my own experience later.
Yeah.
So I think people listening, it's important to know you are where you are, and you're going to focus on the thing that's right in front of your face today. But I've been doing this work for a very long time with a lot of different people. And even now, there are some things that'll creep up.
Yeah.
So, Jacine, one of the questions I had for you is, as you start this practice, because a lot of people are probably aware of, but haven't made it an everyday practice.
Yeah.
What are some of those initial steps to help them kind of focus the process?
So initially, if you're after a goal and for whatever reason you're not getting it, and I will put this out lovingly, if as a business owner you aren't growing every year, there's something holding you back, and it's not your capabilities. It's not. You are more than capable of achieving way more than you ever think you are. It's usually the subconscious programming. So one of the biggest things for your actual programming is actually the environment you're in, actually, Richard. Now for some of you, you'll be in an environment where either you're at home with your family and they mightn't be the most positive people. You can't necessarily get rid of your family. You may even have friends that are, and I've had friends like this previously, where when they interact with you, it's literally they just vent the entire time. And whilst it's great to be there for your friends, if you're consistently every interaction, that's what you get with that friend, it totally changes your energy and your vibe. So it's really important to surround yourself with people who are positive and who are going in the direction that you want. That's one of the reasons why master coaches and groups and communities, even if they are online, are really important. I have become friends with people over the internet that I have felt like we've had a relationship with, and yet I've never actually met them in person. But we've interacted, and then when we do meet, it's for the first time ever, it's oh wow, we feel like we've known each other for years. Now, when I first started, Richard, as I'm sure that there are people in this community that are in this situation, they'd love to do coaching, but they can't afford it yet. And I always put yet on the end of everything that I say, because it means it's in the future for you. And so when I first started, I didn't at the time have a lot of money to be able to spend. So I had to spend it wisely. So I bought lots of books and I read them ferociously. I read mindset books, anything on how you can change your mind, improve your performance. And that was my environment. So I made my environment artificially through reading books and surrounding myself with the words of people who had already been successful, because I wasn't in a position at the time to have a coach. So that's one of the first things that you can actually do, is have a look at where you're spending your time. I can tell you now, I don't watch the news. If it's important enough, someone will tell me about it. And because to be honest, the news is meant to put us in a state of fear. It's not meant to. I can't remember the last time I saw a good news story. So I don't watch it. Like my family were laughing at me this morning. They were telling me that the Olympic Games were on in the UK. And I'm like, they go, oh, we're winning. I'm like, winning what? And Australia's winning all the swimming things. I'm like, really? See, but if it's important enough, I'll find out about it. So you've got to be conscious of that, because that's what's actually going into your subconscious. And it can be very easy to put you in a state of fear. So you see something, like you see that it says the economy is heading for like it's going to be a recession or something like that. And for anyone who's ever seen the movie Chicken Little, watch it if you haven't, because it's literally like, I remember years ago, I had clinic owners, and this was like, we're talking 10 years ago, saying, oh, it's so quiet at the moment, it's this, it's that. And I went, really? Oh, that's not my experience. And they all looked at me, and I'm like, because it literally, like, there's always money out there. It's because as I say to people, when I see Bentley and Rolls-Royce going out of business, then I'll worry. Because there's clearly money out there, because if they were in business still, if there was a problem, they wouldn't be in business. So, you've really got to be conscious of, what you're taking in on a regular basis, because that's going to filter through into your subconscious. And it's going to start implanting thoughts there about there's not enough of this, or I have to be careful because of this. I had my accountant during COVID telling me to hang on to all my cash. I actually accumulated a bucket load of stock. So I did the complete opposite of what he told me to do. Now, we've come out the other side, and do you know now in Australia, there are businesses going under because they can't get raw materials. There is no silicone in Australia. I've got bucket loads of it because I've decided not to use it anymore. There was only 4 products it was in, but you have to look at what everyone's doing. And if the majority of people are doing it, you probably need to go the opposite direction, because the majority of people aren't working on their mindset either. So, yeah.
It's interesting because when you talk about Facebook groups, those are growing in popularity in how many that there are. There are so many spaces on Facebook where you can connect with other professionals. And one of the things I always tell my potential coaching clients, I always use the yet, you can't afford it yet as well. And it's also why I offer the complimentary call, because one of the biggest things I find myself repeating all the time is you don't know what you don't know. If you knew the piece of data that brought you to the mentor, the coach, the trainer, the teacher, the whoever it was, you wouldn't be on that call in the first place.
Exactly.
So there's a value there. And there are sometimes resources that will help you get to that next space. But it's so important, at the beginning of this year, I had to make a decision. I built my business, I built my career on social media. So I believe in the power of it, but I've never paid for it. I've always made genuine connections with genuine people. And of course, that means that, the riffraff comes along too. We have people, but it's important in those moments that you make a boundary. And so when we start talking about our community and building the tribe around us, right?
Yep.
One of the things that is easy to do now is find these people on social media.
Yeah.
I have several people I follow every morning. The first thing I do, I get up, I look at source messages, Jay Shetty, Brendan Burchard, because they're always positive. They're always lifting other people up in their community. So they're not only just sharing their message, but they're sharing other people's messages. And I notice when I don't do that, it will change my entire day.
Yep.
So building a tribe is really, really important. And I have to say, I believe that practice is one of the things that got this conversation to even happen.
Absolutely. And I mean, like now we're even though we've got social media and people think it's not as personal, there still is that ability to connect. Like there truly is.
And you have to choose that.
Yeah,
That's the big differentiator, which I think kind of rolls us into that next conversation piece, what's the difference between someone who's making the right choices, if you will, and successful moving forward, and someone who's not as successful, but feels like they're doing the right things?
I think the difference between someone who's successful and the people who are not, sometimes it's the actions that they're taking. They may not be taking the appropriate actions. It also can be the amount of action they're taking. Now, there's a quote, and I can't remember who it's from, and it says, "There is no work-life balance. There is only work-life choices, and they have consequences." So there's two movements in the industry. There are the people who love what they do, who work a lot of hours because it is their passion. And I will admit, I am in that ballpark. I also do stop, however, and smell the roses. There are the other end of the spectrum, and neither is right or wrong, where they go, I want balance in my life. I want to have a lot more time with my family. I want to be able to be there for my kids. And look, I've been in that situation too when my kids were little, and both of them are different ends of the spectrum. So the thing with being successful is the universe does actually like speed and it likes action. And if you're going to go in the direction of, I'm only going to work a small amount of period of time, then you're either going to have to build a really big community around you to support you to that goal, or you're going to have to create something that's unique, like Canva. Or you will literally have to create something, because it has to be something that's really unique and software or digital for that to really pay off. Now, everyone has different levels of goals, Richard. Like some people are quite happy to hit 100K, other people want millions, other people want billions. And again, that's very individual, not right or wrong. People feel called to different things. But I can tell you, if I did what the other end of the spectrum did, where I'm going to work and have complete time with all my family and everything else, there's no sacrifice there. Does that make sense? Like if I work 9 to 5, there's no sacrifice. And I can tell you now, I wouldn't have achieved what I've achieved with Rococo, because everything comes at a sacrifice. You look at professional athletes, they don't become a professional athlete by working out for 2 hours a day. They become a professional athlete because they've actually done the hard slog and put in the time for it. And even Albert Einstein says this, who is absolutely one of my favorite people from history. He says, complete mastery requires complete devotion. It's part of the reason why I rose up in the aesthetics industry, because for 17 years, all I did was read journal studies. I didn't watch TV. I didn't do anything else. You ask my kids their memories, they go, she was on a laptop reading a journal study. Like literally, they will tell you that. And if I hadn't have done that, I wouldn't have got to where I've got. And I'm not saying what I've done is right, but you've got to decide, where do you want to be? And it comes down to deciding what your choices are. And once you've picked your goal, actually start looking at going, well, if I want to hit that goal, just say for argument's sake, because I know some people do want to be millionaires. If I want to be a millionaire, you've then got to go back and go, well, how does a millionaire act? What do they do? How would they behave? How would they respond? And model that. Because as people say, success leaves clues. If you have a look at what all the great people have done, every single one of them have followed a certain thing. Now, my son at the moment, who's about to become an entrepreneur as well, came out with one of the people that he had actually spoken to, and he said there was 3 things that was needed for success. The first is the ability to sell. So if you can't sell, you're going to struggle, because business is a sales process and you need to learn how to sell. And again, sales comes down to mindset. And for many of us, unfortunately, because we've grown up in the way that we have, we struggle with getting the sale across. Now, I don't, because I can sell ice to Eskimos, and I've been selling since I was 2, because I've talked my father into that many things. Like, the man was a chronic asthmatic, and I talked him into a cat at 2 years of age. I've talked him into a dog, which ripped the library up when he was going through theological college. The dog went after that, but I talked him into another pet after that. So we have to be able to learn to sell. The second thing is we have to learn to develop resilience. Now, the challenge is, when you mentioned frustration before, can I tell you, I know exactly what you're talking about, because I struggle with that on occasion too, because I'll go, here's my goal, here's here, that's the straightest line, that's where I want to go. And nothing in life is straight. You have a look at rivers, they are winding. There is no straight river, like barely ever any straight rivers. Everything in life winds. And so we have to learn to go with the flow, and to realize, don't change your goal. If what you're doing is not working, then have a look at what you're doing. Don't change the goal. What happens is most people change the goal and go, oh, I didn't really want it anyway. And I've been guilty of this. I used to have on my vision board a boat. And we're talking 15 years ago. This is when I was with my ex-husband. And then I went, oh, you don't really need that, Jacine. What do you want that for? And so I
Talk
took
yourself right out of it.
Yeah, I did. I talked myself out of it. I mean, we do have a boat now. It's not a multi-million-dollar one, but we have a nice boat that is, covered. So my husband doesn't get any more skin cancers, hopefully. But we do. So don't change your goal. Change what you're doing, because if you keep your eye on the goal, you will get feedback from the universe. This isn't working. And sometimes you do things and one thing will lead to another that will lead you to something else. And then you can't see it, but in the background, it's being orchestrated. And trust me, it's way better than you could ever possibly conceive with our brains. When you actually put the goal out there and you think about it enough, the universe conspires to make it happen.
And it's interesting that you say that we change the goal, right? And I can think of 1,000 different times I've done that in my life.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, because now I think about, okay, so what do I tell my clients in this moment? Like, when I see that they're frustrated with the outcome, one of the first things we talk about is detaching from the outcome and being aware of, collect that data. I think often spots receive the data, not like what the data says, and then dismiss the data versus utilizing it to really pivot. I'm not a fan of that word, but to shift, to shift where they're going consciously. When we make a decision to set a goal, it's because there's something that's going to provide us.
Yeah.
Whether the house is a goal, whether the house is to go on vacation once this year because you haven't been on vacation in 12 years, whether it's just to take the weekend off once a month, you set that goal because it's going to provide you something to get you closer to the bigger thing you're working towards. And so we have to really be aware as that data comes in so that we can keep going. Which I think, here we go right back into this mindset conversation, right? Is when we get that data, one of the ways I've seen people kind of overcome frustration or overcome, that inward confusion around the data is they start doing affirmations.
Yeah.
Right. So I can do this, 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 or I am doing this, or I already did this. There's a lot of versions of how affirmations work. What is your opinion about affirmations?
I'll be honest, I don't believe they really work. So there'll be other people who'll be like, oh, she didn't say that. But affirmations, like when you're saying something repetitively, like if you were to record it and you were to put emotion into it and you were to listen to it, that might work. But if you're affirming like something, it doesn't work because it needs to be consistent for a start. And most people don't do anything consistently. So like I've said to the team, you know, I've got a thing on my door, and my door says become unignorable. So I see it every single day. It's in line of sight. So affirmations don't work because they don't really engage your emotion. And so you're repeating it. And it's a bit like, to be honest, vision boards as well, Richard. Do you know what I mean? Like I've had, how many people here have used a vision board and said they don't work?
Oh,
Yeah. I've
love
had so many
boards.
people who've gone, how do you get your vision boards to work, Jacine? Because everything on my vision board literally happens. Now, it doesn't necessarily happen in 12 months, but it does happen. So some of the things on my vision board have taken several years to come off. But the thing is, I haven't gone, oh, it doesn't work, it hasn't happened yet. I've believed, and belief is really key, I've believed it's going to happen. And the challenge with vision boards is, for the majority of people, they get a piece of cardboard and they will put images. Some people will put words on there and they'll stick it on their board. And that never worked for me, ever. Like I was just like looking at it going, I don't get it. What do people do with this? Like, and for some people it does work. So what I realized when I did neuro-linguistic programming is that we all have different ways of taking information in and processing information. And I'm AD, which is auditory digital. So I'm really data, numbers, figures, facts. I need numbers. And also too, like for most people, they've said they want to be a millionaire, but it's like an empty goal because it's just a number that they've chosen. And if you ask them, what are you going to do with that $1 million? They can't answer it. So there's no actual thought process as to what they're doing with this money. So for me, I've actually written down exactly what my dream lifestyle is. I've put in everything that I want, how much it's going to cost. So I actually know like what is going to happen with that money. And even with business, if I set a goal, I go, right, if I get this goal, this means we make so much profit. What am I doing with that profit? Where is it going? It's all laid out. So it's real to me, because if you pick an arbitrary number and there's no, if you just say, I want money to put in the bank, that's not really going to motivate you or keep you excited. If you say, I want to earn $200,000 so that I can go and buy an investment property so that I can help my parents out because they can't afford a house, that's got an emotional connection. $200,000 in the bank just sitting there has not have an emotional connection. So with the vision boards, I found out that I'm auditory. And music is my thing. Music to me will change my energy in a heartbeat. And so I put mine on a PowerPoint presentation, and it also has to move, because if it stands there like a static image, I'm bored. So I'm also kinesthetic. So there's visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. And visual is my least. I don't see signs. When I actually read a book, even though I like books rather than audios, I actually read it in my head. So I'm speaking to myself out loud in my head. And for people who are kinesthetic, we need to, and that's most estheticians, by the way, they actually need to do things. They need to touch things. They need to feel things. So if you're kinesthetic, the richer the colors, the more vibrant it is. If you're doing a board on the wall, you need to actually put tactile stuff on there, like furry stuff or things that are different shapes, colors, not flat, because everything on a vision board is usually flat. And you'll find you'll probably end up getting a different response. And my song that I put for my vision board too is one that actually inspires me and engages my emotions. And that's key, because if you don't engage that emotion and you're just looking at it, nothing happens. And then you have to take action.
There's 2 points that I think are really interesting, because I'm the kind of person, like you said, I have to say it in my mind. I don't visualize very well. I'm not good at that, but I have to feel that. And I think back to aesthetic school, I can read I enjoy the data I get from reading, but I am not a lay in bed reader. I don't understand people. I don't understand. Like, if I'm in bed and I'm reading, I'm out. It's over. When I was in aesthetic school specifically, and practicing for that test, that theory test, one of the things I found that helped put me in motion and get me interacting with the data, I would clean the house. And it wasn't that cleaning the house was a distraction, it was I needed to physically be moving
Move. Yeah.
because I am a moving person. I don't even like when I am reading articles on my phone, I'm pacing. It drives everybody that ever lives near me crazy. My ex-husband's mother-in-law, her backyard had this figure 8 that I paced all the time. Weeds as tall as me, but there was a figure 8 and it was mine. And everybody knew, oh, Richard's outside. When I was on phone calls before I started doing Zoom calls, I'm that figure 8 because it's that physicality,
Yeah.
but we're all very different. You know, I used to do vision boards, and when I did them, they were always successful. I stopped doing them, I don't, for a while. But I found this conversation you and I had about the vision board, putting it into a PowerPoint, putting music to it, because I love, you know, if I'm not reading, or even when I'm reading, I'll have music on. I'll be doing
Yeah.
my paces, music on. So all these things really are unique to who we are. But the other part of it too is the personal responsibility.
Yeah.
My big thing with affirmations, especially today's YouTube world, is we'll listen to a affirmation video that is a chant being chanted to us. And I truly, truly believe that the people with the best of intentions that don't get the outcome they look at is because they have in the back of their mind the idea, the seed, and the belief. Well, it worked for them, but it would never work for me. So now they've given up that responsibility to the outcome, you know, and I see this a lot in conversations. I'll tell somebody an idea to get them in motion, and oh, I've tried that and it didn't work. We start to close ourselves off, and I think that happens in everything we do in life, and sometimes we're aware of it. You know, we'll see some great idea in a group and we'll try it, we won't get the outcome.
Yeah.
But like you say, in this actionable piece is, are you connected to that action? Are you doing something just because you were told to do it? Or are you emotionally connected to the process? Are you emotionally connected to the outcome? Because you have to care about the outcome if you're ever going to achieve the outcome.
Oh,
If you're just
absolutely.
doing it just to do it, you're never going to get there.
Yeah.
You have to really actually deep in your soul want that outcome. So I think this is great information for everybody listening today.
I think it's also too important to differentiate. You do need to take inspired action, but we need to learn to differentiate the difference between inspired action and learning to step out of our fear zone as well. Because often with actions, you know, like when I first started my brand, I had to go and cold call clinics. I was the one knocking on doors, ringing them up, going and putting out samples. Did I like doing it? No. But it's what I should have been doing logically. Now, I did that for quite a while, and it was good because it put me out of my comfort zone. And I got some traction with it, but not a lot. And then I found another way. And what people fail to realize is that any action is better than no action. And at the end of the day, I moved in the end to LinkedIn, and that's where I sort of started to find my groove. But a lot of people use it doesn't feel right for me, when what it really is I'm scared of rejection. And so you've got to learn to differentiate the two. Not feeling right, like both of them will feel like there's something not right in your gut, but you've got to recognize whether it's fear. And really fear is just, it's made up. You're basically feeling an emotion for something that hasn't even happened. Literally, you're feeling an emotion for something that's not even happened, and it's controlling your psychology and your brain. And what I've often found is often when you face your fear, it falls away anyway. Like you actually make the decision, okay, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. And then the one thing you didn't want to do, you don't have to do anyway half the time, because it literally does fall away. But they have to differentiate the two, because a lot of people don't do things because it is stepping out of their comfort zone. And so because of that, they don't quite reach the potential that they should. And fear of rejection, like often that will again stem back to childhood. Like I've had clients where they hadn't put themselves out there. Like I had one girl who was incredibly intelligent, and she's like, I don't feel smart enough. And I'm like, but you've got degrees. And it was all related to something that happened when she was 4. And once we actually took her back and she realized, she went, she never made the connection of where this actually started, and she let go of it. And now she's booming. But a lot of it is in our childhood. It's releasing that.
And it's interesting, we just talked, you and I just had this very private conversation about, I feel confident facing rejection in business.
Yeah.
But facing rejection in my personal life, I turn into a very sad individual. And really it's because that's important to me. But I realize, when I've had this conversation with a lot of coaches lately, because I'm looking to expand and to grow and to do some really big things in my business. And I always kind of get a little joy when somebody says, oh, you're not going to do that until you do fill in the blank. And one of the things that I did when I first started in the beauty industry was the cold calling, because it was free. It took my time. That was it. And for those of you that don't know a phone book, you start at A and you just go down the list if they're publicly listed. And I had 2 markers. I had a green one. If they answered and interacted with me at all, I put a green dot next to their name. If they hung up on me, said they weren't interested, or provided any dissatisfaction, I put a red line through them. And I would go through the whole book and then start back at the beginning. And that is actually one of the ways that I did $160,000 in 6 months. And I don't do well with rejection. I am still working through rejection. But one of the things people come to me for and talk to me about all the time is, how do you always put yourself out there and you seem like you don't care? Oh, I care. Trust me. It is scary. Absolutely. But I am so determined to reach the outcome. And in that part of my life, it was financial ability to take care of my family.
Yeah.
And now the goal, I'm single. The goal is really everything I look at with my is
if you were to
the next level. So you have to have it.
Yeah. If you were to visualize that, Richard, of you doing that cold call and not being afraid of rejection, and then you were to superimpose that into your relationships, it would totally change. And on that comment, like estheticians are the same. Like seriously, I don't know one esthetician who gives up on their client. You don't change the goal of them having clear skin or whatever it is that you want to achieve for them. You keep that same goal. What you do is you change your methodology or what you're doing, and yet they don't do that in their business. So it's literally exactly what you were just saying, not afraid of rejection there, and you just have to transfer it to the other. Because if you do sales, they're not rejecting you personally. They're rejecting the concept or the idea. And it's not even rejection. Half the time, can I be honest, it's not the right time yet. That's all it is. So if you reframe it to, it's just not the right time yet, it puts a totally different energy on it. Because I'll be honest, when my husband and I met, we dated and I let him hang for a month. And then I finally came back.
And I think that's a really important point, though, is going back to that conversation about being
Yeah,
able to detach from the outcome, right?
yeah,
But also don't change the goal. If they
yeah,
say no, we're not right now, ask the next question. You know, the fortune is always in the follow-up.
yeah,
The next
absolutely.
question should be, can I call you in 3 weeks? Can I call you in 6 weeks? Can I call you in 3 months?
Yeah,
Don't just give up on yourself or them. Ask for permission to respect what they told you. Because then
absolutely.
you don't feel like the dirty salesperson because you asked their permission and they gave it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So yeah. But yes, no, it is about reframing it because, you know, like often what we think we can't do, we've actually been successful somewhere else with that same thing. And it's just remembering that we have been. And, you know, like if you were to ask everyone on this call to remember a time when you were successful, whether that was when you won a race when you were in primary school, whether it was when you read a book that you didn't think you'd ever get through, whatever it is, everyone has had some form of success in their life. Because if you didn't, none of you would have any self-esteem. Like, so you have been successful at something, whether it be a relationship, doesn't matter what it is. And we just have to get back into that energy and that emotion of how we felt when that happened and take that in and superimpose that onto your goal. And you can do that through visualization. Visualization is amazing, and it is one of the most underutilized powers of the mind that's ever been done. Like they've actually done studies where, are you ready for this? If you visualize yourself going to the gym and doing a workout, you'll burn 25% more calories. Now, this isn't pseudoscience. This is actually fact. Research studies have done on it. They also did studies on athletes. Are you ready for this? This is high performance athletes, where one of them went and physically did the training. It was on basketballers. The other one did 25% of the same training. So did a quarter of what the other ones did and did 75% visualization. And the other group just did visualization. And they looked at their performance and how they performed. And the group that did the visualization and 25% of the actual physical effort performed at the same level as the people who just did the physical. But what's interesting, so they had a 25% improvement in their actual performance. They measured it. The people who just did the visualization, are you ready for this? Had a 24% improvement, and yet they didn't lift a muscle. Because the thing is, our brain can't tell the difference. So if you are constantly visualizing your life and how you want it to be, and you're focused on it, your brain can't tell the difference. Which is why, in particular, I became a master of mindset when I ended up having 5 spinal surgeries. Because for 8 years, I had chronic pain. And I learned very, very quickly, the more you focus on it, the worse it gets. Don't focus on it. Distract yourself. Go and do something else that gives you pleasure. Because neural pathways in the brain are like, they're like a path. So when you first start a task, you're like chopping through like African, you know, basically forest or whatever, because it's never been done before, which is why it takes so long for habits to form, because it's a new thing. But once you've done it repetitively, so if you have constantly complained about something or done something, that neural pathway is very well engraved, and it takes time for it to die down. So there's a thing called a pattern interrupt, which marketers use it all the time to garnish our attention. So if anyone's ever seen those things with the videos where the monster calls out, that's a pattern interrupt. It's designed to get your attention. People call them clickbait. It works. So
Absolutely. It stops you and
if there's something that you're wanting to change and that you're not doing, or you want to get rid of, whether it be smoking or whatever it is, you actually need to change that pattern by replacing that behavior with something else. And not just replacing it with something else, but replacing it with something else that gives the same emotional benefit. Does that make sense? So what people do is they go, well, I'm going to stop smoking. Let's go, okay, well, what are you going to do instead? Oh, I'm going to choose some nicotine gum, or I'm going to do a patch or whatever. But that doesn't provide them with the emotional reward. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So you have to replace the behavior with something else that's actually still going to give them the reward. So if it's not smoking, it might be that they treat themselves consistently on a daily basis for a period of 31 days for something to make them feel good. Because that's literally what they're getting with cigarette smoking. They get the thing of feeling good, they get the feeling of acceptance, because originally years ago, it was cool to smoke. I decided after one cigarette behind the church that I couldn't taste my food, and that was enough for me. So I didn't ever go down that path. But my father smoked.
You know, I think this is important in our business too, because I saw my clients every 2 weeks, but typically we see our clients every 3 to 4 weeks.
Yep.
And from that first appointment to that second appointment, you're talking about creating a new habit even for your client.
Yep.
So how often are you following in with them? How often are you checking and supporting them? Because that's a new habit for them. And their results impact your success. So the value there, you know, it's interesting when you think about how to implement all of these things into our business. There are plenty of ways to implement them into our personal lives.
Yep.
But when you start to really bring it back to business, again, now I'm emotionally connected to want to call that client at the end of the day, because following up can feel uncomfortable. It can feel like an invasion of their personal space. But now if we're reframing that, you are now following up with them because they're learning a new habit.
Yeah.
Think about how many clients come to us using bar soap, and now you've put a 7-piece system in front of them, which I recommend because I'm a strong salesperson. But I can do that because I follow them up. I have a system in play, and I'm emotionally invested in their success. So I want to respect everyone's time.
They'll expect it. If they know you're doing it, they'll expect it. And it is that support.
Exactly.
And that's why if you look at weight loss companies, there's a reason why they have a tribe or a community. They know for a fact that you are more likely to do it if someone is holding you accountable. If no one's holding you accountable for doing something, you are less likely to do it. Now, I'm actually because I'm always studying. Like I can't not study. I would not cope with it. But I'm studying at the moment. I'm doing more personal development and in the space of, you know, mastering mindset and things like that. And I have accountability buddies. And can I tell you, like, there's quite a bit of work to be done with this course. If I didn't have those accountability buddies, and I didn't have to check in with them every week, even as motivated as I am, because life gets busy, I would possibly not do everything I'm meant to do. But because I know that I have to check in with them, it makes me accountable. So the question is for everyone, how can you be more accountable in your life? And who can you check in with to make yourself accountable? Because for most of us, we don't have anyone.
And I found something I learned in my former relationship is I told myself that he was my accountability partner. And he consistently told me, you need a friend. Anybody, talk to anybody else. And it wasn't because he didn't love me and support me. It was because he got tired of hearing about it.
Yeah.
And my mother was just, and my mother's the same way. She could repeat my whole course at this point.
Yeah.
And it's not that she's not proud of it or successful. So I think who you choose as your accountability partner is really important. We have about 7 more minutes before we have to go. And I want to share a few things and all of you guys that are on today's call. You know, Jacine and I have come together because we will be live in Spokane, Washington in March, and we'll be continuing this conversation. And one of the things that is unique about the Complete Spa Business Retreat is that, you know, in these conversations that we have in this digital sphere, you're going to learn ways to implement some useful tools. But when you're creating your tribe, there is nothing more valuable than coming together in the same room, interacting with the data. But what makes the Complete Spa Business Retreat truly unique is every presenter that will be providing you knowledge has also been tasked with the responsibility to put a physical activity that you will execute with each of the things that you learn over the 4 days. So Jacine is coming, and she is going to be continuing this mindset conversation. She is also going to be bringing her cosmetic chemistry brain with her. I'm very excited about that topic. But Jacine, let everybody know what other goodies they might be getting if they decide to join us in March.
With the actual retreat, if you are coming to join us in Spokane, everyone who is signing up for the VIP ticket is actually getting a copy of my upcoming book called Just Go For It, How to Grow a Multi-Million-Dollar Business with No Paid Advertising. So in that book, I share what I've done with my journey with Rococo and how I've actually achieved it. So there's that book. There's also a hypnosis audio for priming your brain for success and getting rid of, excuse my French, shit. So the great thing about hypnosis is, for those of you who've never done it, you don't turn into ducks or chickens, and we don't get to do anything stupid. We are in a hypnotic state on a regular basis. If you've ever just had time pass when you've been with a friend and you go, oh my God, look at the time, that is hypnosis. You are in trance. You've enjoyed the moment. So we're going to be putting a hypnosis audio in there so that you guys can listen to that consistently to rewire your brain for success. So that, you know, that consistent, as I said, it's the neural pathway. Once it's actually ingrained, if you keep playing it, you cannot help but change. I'm telling you now, you will change, because this is exactly what I've done to change my mindset. I have listened to audios. I have been brainwashing my children, Richard, from the age of 3. I've had some subliminal messages on the computer. So my kids, every time they got on the computer, were getting brainwashed that they were smart, they were this, they were that, and they believe it, which is great. So they get that. But we're also we're giving away some Rococo for full-size products for the ones who are VIPs. And for those of you who are not VIPs, we're also giving a little generous bag of samples as well. So for those of you who are ready to take your business to the next level, and even if it's not your business, if it's your own mindset to another level to achieve more, come and join us at Spokane, Washington. It is, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Richard, the 13th to the 17th of March. Have I got the dates right? I think it is.
The 13th, it's the 13th through the 16th.
16th.
So it is, but you will actually be arriving on Sunday. So a few things. Everybody, there are 100 live tickets for live attendees. And then we also have a virtual opportunity for you. The live attendees, everything is in. All you have to do is get to the Spokane International Airport. Once you've completed your investment, we do have payment plans available through August 31st. So if you decide you want to attend, there are limited seats remaining. There are limited payment plans remaining. But head over to richardmerrillconsulting.com, click the retreat tab, fill out the RSVP form, and you will get an email with an estimate showing you the options to register. But what I want you to know, the biggest thing is you don't have to wait until March to start changing your business. You will also get access to my 12-week program where we go through 8 fundamental business acumen pieces, and we start working on your business together now. VIP get 12 one-on-one accountability calls, and our professional level gets 6 one-on-one calls. You also get 50% off future purchases with both of these investments. So if you're looking to take your business to that next level, join me and the 8 other professionals and experts who are coming. And here's the best part of it all. Whether you join live or virtually, you'll have 1 year access because it will be recorded and in the online education platform for you for a whole year. So again, not only are you going to learn something, implement it with physical activity, but you're going to have a year to follow up on it and get support from all of these experts that are coming together to take you and your life to the next level. I hope today was super informative and helpful. I want to reiterate the 3 things that I learned today. Visualize. Use my voice instead of somebody else's for recordings,
Yeah.
and be emotionally connected to the outcome.
Yeah.
I look forward to seeing all of you in Facebook and the Educated Therapist group and wherever else we may connect. Have a great morning in Australia and a great evening in the US. Talk to you
Awesome.
guys soon.
Bye, everyone.